So I am with Charlie Aqua. That's the correct pronunciation, Charlie?
Correct. Yes,
And Charlie has agreed to speak to me. She is a an American buyer of a Spanish property. Am I on the right tracks?
you're right.
And your journey from the US to Spain, your buying journey, is quite an interesting one.
I'm American, as you said. I'm from New York City. I'm in the interior design business, which I've been doing for about the last 20 years. I fell in love with Spain probably 20 years ago and started vacationing here. Spent my summers down on the Costa de la Luz. After maybe 6 or 7 years, started thinking about it might be a great place to start looking at not only buying a vacation property, but look into the future of where I was going to retire. Being an American, your retirement options are not all that great, and Spain afforded a lot more opportunity for me, I felt, than what was available to me in the U.S. My situation changed a lot because when the transaction was finally consummated, we were in the middle of COVID and we were in the middle of lockdown, which
Right.
changed things considerably for me. My interior design business pretty much encompasses the entire U.S. I also have clients in Europe. I work on the very, very high end of the real estate world. It's relatively big, and I'm relatively well known in the circles I travel. And for clients looking for the types of things I do, I'm one of the few people in the entire world that does it. So I've sort of made a name for myself over the last 20
Uh,
years.
Although that's not part of the aim of this conversation,
Conversation.
but the it just can't help but connect the dots here. I mean, Marbella, where I'm based, is
Exactly.
high
Yeah,
end. So, is
yeah,
there
that's
any
right. That's
scope
one of
there
the reasons.
for?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons you and I are. Yes,
Right.
that's one of
Okay.
the reasons that we're speaking, because it's actually, to be honest with you, it's my ultimate goal to really start to wind down my U.S. business and keep a handful of very, very good clients, but to expand my business over here. It's easier, it's more interesting. There's a lot of reasons and a lot of advantages for me to do it here.
And just for clarity's sake, when we talk about interior design, are we talking about the interior design service, or are we talking about the sort of the more retail, the financial, the furniture aspect of that? Just tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I encompass a whole lot of things. One of my main areas of expertise is I finish homes. So as an example, after an interior designer has come in, or if a client bought a home and they've got some of the furnishings in there, I'll go in and finish it off. I'll take care of the linens. I'll take care of all the lifestyle kind of pieces to the puzzle. I also do full on interior design, but my focus and expertise is really in both staging for real estate development. I've also done packages for, say, condo developments or hotel condo projects around the world where buyers will come in and buy a condo, and you can buy the linens and all the little personal accessories all as a package. I've done that for developers before. And then, as I said, when you have people who buy high net worth individuals who buy homes and they don't want to be involved in it, they just want somebody to come in and take care of it, finish it off, and they just want to put the key in the door and walk in. So I can do everything from wine collections for people, art on the walls, to, learning about their lifestyle and figuring out how they're going to use their home and equipping the home to suit their particular needs.
And you say it's in the high end, so
Oh,
luxury,
yeah.
etc.
Yes.
So
We're
how luxury are we talking here? Just a bit
well,
of
I mean,
context.
it it kind of depends, because from client to client, it's going to vary, because certain people have certain things that are important to them, even in the $1 million condo price range. That buyer may want high-end linens, may want to entertain nicely. But then again, I work in, 10, 15, 20, $30 million properties all day long. But in New York City, that could show one-bedroom apartment. So
Right. And just for clarity, the name of your business is the Silver Peacock. Is
Silver
that
Peacock. The
where does that
Silver
name come
Peacock.
from?
It was when I formed this particular company, it had to do with hospitality, because a peacock is the symbol of hospitality, and silver was sort of connoting, high end and luxury. One of the other things that clients go to me for is because through all the years that I've been in the business, I've developed relationships with very small little workshops around the world. And that's my forte, because my general client isn't interested in luxury named brand items. They can go to Hermes and go shopping all day long. It doesn't show anything other than they have a Black American Express card and they like orange boxes. My client is somebody who appreciates, craftsmanship and handwork and the story that goes behind, making the items that they have in their homes. They're not interested in shopping at a mall or shopping on a luxury boulevard for the brand names that are associated with luxury home.
Right. So we're talking, I guess, what you could call true luxury rather than...
Correct. Yeah, exactly. And, and luxury today means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But, the core of it is, hand craftsmanship and attention to detail above anything else.
Now let's put you in a location. So what you bought in Spain, you actually, is it in the province of Cádiz that you're in?
Yes, I'm in Cádiz province. I'm in a little town called Benelux Casavieja.
That's a mouthful, isn't it?
Which you may or may not know.
I've not heard of.
It apparently has quite the reputation throughout Spain. When I travel around the country and people find out I'm from Benelux, they're like all in an uproar. Benelux was a little village that had a bunch of secessionists that stood up during the Civil War. So that's their story and their claim to fame. It's a little pueblo, but we're about 20 minutes away from Bahía de la Frontera, which is, becoming more and more of a tourist destination, which is why I'm happy I'm here and not over there, which is where I originally started my search.
So if you could sum up your experience of buying a property in Spain in a few words, what would be the best way of describing it?
Don't try to do it on your own.
Don't try and do it on your own. Okay. And why is that?
Well, the problem as I've seen it, I started looking for a property over 5 years ago before I met Mark, and I tried to do it on my own. And I actually have a banking background. I worked on Wall Street before my design career. So I'm fairly fluent in the banking industry. Have worked with banks and brokers and people my whole life. A lot of them are clients of mine. And I tried to do this on my own. And you cannot Google how to buy a property in Spain and get clear and concise information from A to Z on what you follow in order to get the job done, because it keeps changing. And there's different rules that pop up depending upon the type of property and where you are. And there's just, it was like being on a treasure hunt. And every time you got to the pot of gold, instead of actually consummating the deal, you just found out one more piece of information that blew the deal up that you were working on and caused you to start all over again.
And when you say Mark, you mean Mark Elliott Lama, from the owner of Fluent Finance Abroad. So Fluent Finance Abroad are the ones that helped you with the financing.
Ultimately, finally got the deal done for me and was able to secure a mortgage for me. But, at the beginning of my quest, I didn't even know that Americans could get mortgages in Spain.
Tell me about that.
Well, when I started looking at properties, everybody that I spoke with, first of all, Americans, especially where I am, are not all that prevalent. We have more Brits and at that time part of the EU. So things were completely different. And as soon as you mentioned you were an American, it was like, cash, or go find a bank in the U.S. who's going to give you money. So I spent a couple of years just trying to look at less expensive properties that didn't really fit what I was looking for, but I kind of resigned myself to that school of thought until my attorney, who I ultimately met, who works with expats, said, no, you can get a mortgage through some of the local banks. And he introduced me to Sabadell Bank, who was the local bank working with expats in this area. And we started down the road with them, looking at properties that were purported to be mortgageable.
Right. And what happened? They weren't.
Well, that's the treasure hunt. The treasure hunt is, you start, it's a work in progress. You start to learn, first of all, especially where I am, because we are in essentially the Campo, there's all kinds of issues with the papers and the escrituras and who owns the property and where is the property. So once you learn that, okay, the paper part is important, and you're told that you have to have papers, then it sounds all clear and good, which seems to make sense to me. The first property that I was seriously interested in, that I went to my bank to Sabadell with was supposedly had all the papers in order, which ultimately they were. But nobody from the bank to my attorney to any other party that was involved said the papers, that's only one step. It has to be in an urbanization so that the bank will actually give you a mortgage. But the bank spent, I don't know, 4 or 5 months reviewing financials and reviewing appraisals and tax searches and whatnot. And then finally, after, 5 months, they're like, oh, well, everything's in order, but you're not in urbanization. We can't give you a mortgage. And it's like, well, but why did somebody not know this from the beginning? Because it's very specific, town by town, what's urbanized and what's not. And nobody brought that up. So you start all over again. So that's kind of, that's the beginning of the story. And that's why, as I said, you feel like you're going down a rabbit hole, because then the bank said to me, okay, great. So this house is not going to work unless you want to pay cash for it. So go find a piece of property that's urbanized and we have no problem. We've already looked at your financials. Everything's fine, blah, blah, blah. So I went out, started looking for other properties. Then I find out that in my area, there's really only 3 towns that are actually urbanized where you could actually buy a piece of property that you could get a mortgage on.
So you find out by process of elimination rather than in advance, saying you can get something here and here.
There's that's the biggest problem. There's no concise source of information for you to go and read, as I said, from step A to step B to step C, and what you can do and what you can't do. There's a lot of gray here. I'm used to sort of the U.S. where it's kind of black and white. It either works or it doesn't work. Here, it's like ever changing. And as an example, as I said, so the bank I was working with said to me, okay, all's fine. Go find a piece of property that's urbanized. I go and find the house I'm in now. And the bank says to me, oh, no, wait, you're over 60 now. We can't give you a mortgage at all. Then they're like,
you started your search at 40, right?
yeah, exactly. And then they said, well, maybe we could give you a little bit. Well, we'll just give you a couple $100,000. I said, but the house costs a lot more than that. And you told me 6 months ago, go find a house and no problem. And in my book, no problem means no problem. And especially when you said you looked at my financials. And so I go out, I look, and they said, oh, no, we'll give you a couple €100,000. I said, well, and that's going to help me in what way exactly?
So what did you do then?
So then I actually was introduced to the local banks here in Benelux by some of the real estate people here that were involved in helping me find the particular house that I'm in. And it was the same story. Well, this story changed a little bit. They knew we were urbanized. They knew that they could grant a mortgage, but it's a local bank in a town where the average cost of the houses are under 100,000 euros. I'm in a golf course urbanization, and the costs are obviously a lot higher. So the bank starts getting scared when there's a lot of extra zeros attached.
Right.
But again, the person who works in the bank, oh, yeah, no problem. Everything's fabulous. You've come in with, one of our good clients, not to worry. Get us your paperwork. And then again, you go down the rabbit hole because here, is this all the paperwork you need? Oh, yeah, this is it. Don't worry. We're going to submit it now. Oh, 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, 5 weeks later. Oh, well, maybe we need a little bit more information. And you go put them more information in. And then you have to wait another 6 weeks while somebody's on vacation or not thinking about you or whatever. And it continues to drag on and drag on and drag on and drag on. And then ultimately they come back with, oh, no, we're not giving mortgages right now, after all. And the ultimate decision-making process doesn't lie in the local branch with the lady who's sitting there as the branch manager, which is another thing you don't know, because in the U.S., your banking officer has a lot of pull and say over what happens, because that's where you build the relationship that you do. Here, it's a lot different. And I was an American, which also scared them to death because there really are no Americans around where I am.
So then what happened? How did you get the mortgage in the end?
Well, how I ultimately got the mortgage was after 2 local banks here dragged me around for literally over 6 months. We actually went into lockdown. We were in lockdown. I had come here in December and had found the house, gone to the local, talked to my original Sabadell bank, and then that's when they told me I was too old and my house was too expensive, but thank you anyways. Then we went to the local banks. And then after the local banks finally said, no, we can't help you, we're not even making mortgages at this point. Finally, my attorney says to me, oh, why don't you try this mortgage broker that we've worked with in the past? And I'm like, but you've been helping me with this for 5 years. Where was the mortgage broker 5 years ago? Why didn't you save me a lot of aggravation? In his defense, he's Spanish, and the Spanish have a different view of paying extraordinary charges to have people help you. So I think that he was trying to do me a service by not costing me any money, when he didn't realize that I'm happy to pay some money to expedite the situation and have a professional take me by the hand and just get this done. You know, I needed to get it done, and especially at this point, because I'm locked down in the U.S. now. So I can't even come to Spain. We're not allowed in. Okay. So I contacted Mark via email, and we started the whole transaction completely by email and phone calls. Julian and I became very close friends. We chatted every morning.
Julian Gallagher from Flow Finance.
Yes, he was my case manager, or my confidant, or my
tell me about that experience.
Shoulder to cry on. It was light years different. It was completely different than what happened when I was dealing with the banks on my own. I mean, first of all, I'm self-employed. So self-employed means different things to different people, but ultimately the whole bookkeeping process is a little different than when somebody hands you a paycheck every week. So Fluent Finance is used to dealing with people like this. The banks themselves are not necessarily, and as much as they contend that they understand, they don't actually understand, and it becomes far too complicated for them to even want to think about, because they're at that point they weren't in any big hurry to make mortgages anyways. So if they could find a reason to turn you down, they would. But Mark, I mean, it was very simple. It was very straightforward. The fact that they pre-qualify you is huge, because that was my biggest complaint about this whole process. This should have never taken me 5-6 years to get done. Because if somebody right off the bat would have pre-qualified me and said yes or no and actually stuck by their word, I would have been able to move on and get this done a lot quicker. You know, the whole urbanization fact, all the extra security clearances I had to go through on a piece of property I was looking at. And none of this would have happened had I been dealing with it.
So your message there is it's worth going with a broker.
Oh, yeah, dear. And there's no
fellow
question.
Americans.
There's no question. Well, first of all, to fellow Americans, you can go get a mortgage, and you have a tremendous opportunity here. So I would encourage any American to seriously consider this. There's a variety of reasons, not exclusive to the fact we have an election coming up, and I am inclined to tell you that there's going to be a lot of Americans looking for alternatives should things not go the way we would hope.
I've seen in the Costa del Sol part, Marbella area where I operate, we have seen over the last 24 months, 18 months, quite a spike in interest from the U.S. And we thought it was part of exchange rate was part of it, but is for the politics more?
The exchange rate, I think the Americans don't, I mean, you know, unless you're high net worth individual and you're playing the currency market, you know, I don't think that that's the driving factor. I think it's the quality of life. I think it's the political situation. I think it's a whole litany of other things. I mean, I'm on for whatever, good, bad, or indifferent, every expat group that's on Facebook. And some of them are solely American-based, and some of them are international-based, but they're all about expats in Spain. And the amount of Americans that you're seeing, before it was mostly, you know, retired people looking for somewhere inexpensive to live. But now it's across the board. It's young families who don't want to send their children to school and worry about they're going to get shot while they're in kindergarten, to what's being taught in the schools, to the quality of life. I mean, there's a whole litany of reasons people are moving to Spain or leaving the U.S. And as I said, it's across the board. It's young families. It's young people who are just getting out of school. It's middle-aged people. It's people looking for retirement. The whole demographic, I think, has changed quite a bit over the last couple of years. And people also, it's just, as I said, I mean, retirement places in the U.S., it's expensive. It costs me 75% less to live here in Spain than it does to live in New York City. That's a lot of money.
That is a lot.
That's a lot of money.
Were you in Manhattan in New York?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah. And I've operated my businesses in Manhattan for the last 30 years. So I've paid commercial rent in New York City for over 30 years. Okay. I mean, what I purchased my home for wouldn't get me a studio apartment in New York City.
Wow.
Yeah.
So to go back to the States, do you come to Malaga Airport? Is that
No,
yours?
No. I fly to Jerez. I go to Madrid, Jerez. They have 1 or 2 flights a day nonstop now to Malaga, but after you fly all night long, you don't really want to put yourself into a car and get on the motorway and then drive, because I'm about 2 hours from Malaga, give or take, depending upon traffic. And I'm only 45 minutes from Jerez, and I don't mind the stop in Madrid. You know, you stop for an hour, get a coffee, get back on the plane, and it's 45 minutes, and I'm in Jerez.
Wow.
And it's a small, easy airport also.
What about legal aspects to move into Spain as an American?
That's in some cases how my particular situation changed, because when I originally started this little process, it was originally our intention to buy something here and do the 3 months, 90 days in, 90 days out situation, which won't require a visa, unfortunately. And then ultimately, when it was time to really retire and spend more time down here, I would start worrying about the residency issues. Unfortunately, because the fact we were in the middle of lockdown, when my approval for my mortgage came through, the only way I was going to be able to get into the country was to get residency. So I had to go through the process earlier than I had intended to get residency here.
And what are the considerations for either other Americans or estate agents here? What should they be aware of as far as residency for Americans is concerned?
Well, residency, I mean, it's Spain, so there's a fair amount of paperwork that's involved, but none of it's all that onerous. I mean, I see posts all day long of people saying they need to go to immigration lawyers and this and that, and it's all relatively straightforward. And most people will come in on a non-lucrative visa, which is the non-working visa, and all you have to show is a minimal amount of money in the bank so that the government knows you're not coming here to live off the government and that you're able to support yourself. So I would assume that an estate agent who's working with somebody who's looking to spend a decent amount of money, the financial end of the visa requirement is not all that complicated. What starts to become an issue, though, with the visa is because you're going to then become a tax resident, and there's a double taxation treaty, and that scares some people. But, you know, if you get a good tax accountant here who understands American tax law, you can work it out, and it's not that onerous.
Were you tempted to look at the golden visa?
No, I didn't qualify. I didn't qualify
okay.
for visa, because golden visa you have to spend €500,000.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, if somebody has the resources to do the golden visa is far less complicated than a non-lucrative visa, and you don't have to. I'm in a situation right now where I'm going into my second renewal now. I had to renew once after 1 year, then I renewed again after 2 years, and now I'm going to renew again, which will take me to 5, and then I'll get permanent residency here.
Okay. So do you have any plans of moving at all, or are you now happily in?
Oh, no, I'm staying right where I am. I mean, I think that, first of all, I like the area. I have a whole group of friends that are within 20 minutes of me, some that come and go throughout the year, and some who've actually moved here. No, Americans, Dutch, Germans, Brits, Scottish, a whole litany of Spanish people. No, I like it here. I live in New York City. I still maintain an apartment in New York City. I still have a business in New York City, as much as I want to start to wind it down a little. I have all the aggravation and city input that I need when I go back there. I'm very happy to be in the middle of no place, looking outside at a couple donkeys in the rice fields.
Do you ever come down this part of the coast at all?
Yeah. I come down there all the time. Yeah, when we want to see, like the big cities, I come down.
Right. Okay.
No, it's great down there. I mean, I think that's what's good where I am, because I'm 45 minutes down to the coast.
Right. Okay.
And Jib is easy for shopping. You can go right over to Jib if you have a need to go to UK supermarkets when you need to. So no, I'm 20 minutes to seven of the most beautiful beaches in all of Europe. So wow, I think it's the best of all worlds.
So final question for you, and this is slightly more abstract because, as you know, I work with estate agencies mostly. Is there any advice that you could give estate agents here about what they should take into account or inform themselves about in terms of the special needs for an American buyer versus a European buyer?
I think that's an interesting question, because I think that, first of all, you're down on the Costa del Sol, and when you're dealing with some of these more luxury golf resorts and condo developments, they try to westernize it and make it more American. But you still need to make sure that the people really have a grasp on where they're coming. And this is not the U.S. And you have to understand that, but you have to embrace that. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And you need to kind of try to roll. And you also have to learn to roll with it. This is not the U.S., okay? And people have to be ready for it. Things are a little more complicated, but the trade-off is you have a much nicer quality of life here. So you have to learn to deal with the paperwork, deal with a little inconvenience, deal with the fact that everything's going to take longer than it needs to. But you're not in America, first of all, and, all the trappings of an American home are not going to necessarily be here, because that's not necessarily what's important to a developer down here. But, you can customize a home to a certain extent to make it American if that's what you need. If you need a big giant kitchen, which is usually the biggest complaint of most of the Americans who come here, is that Spanish kitchens aren't that large. But again, you're going to be outside most of the time, so why do you need a gigantic kitchen in the first place? But that's what you had in the U.S., so you got to have it here. But I think you have to, as I said, I think that some people, you really need to make sure they understand where they are. They're in another country. This is not the U.S., and that's why you're leaving the U.S., okay? So, I watch these real estate house hunting shows all the time, all throughout Europe, and everybody's like, well, in the U.S., I had a giant yard, and in the U.S., I did this, and in the U.S., I did that. It's like, okay, well, then stay in the U.S., because that's not why you're coming here, okay? And you have to be a little flexible in your needs and your wants, but the supposed disadvantages are going to be outweighed by your quality of life, the cost of living, the weather, and, your ability to travel all over Europe without a lot of aggravation. So I think as I said, I think that an estate agent really needs to make sure that people are not deluding themselves. Right. Some of these questions that you see, and the other thing is that the people are moving here, they're not you don't need to take everything that you own. So, look at this as sort of a fresh start more so, and kind of have an open mind, and your lifestyle is going to change. So, as I said, I think that that's the most important thing that an estate agent needs to understand, is to try to understand what the person's concept of what their life is going to be like and what the reality really is going to be, and get them to kind of understand that, so they're not, frustrated and disappointed.
Well, you going from a New Yorker to an Andalusia, that doesn't get any more different in terms of how you expect things to happen.
Well, not only an Andalusian who's in the middle of the Campo.
Yes, okay? yeah, donkey land. Gotcha.
I'm literally in the Campo. I had to go take my car for repair the other day, and it took me 7 phone calls to get the leasing company to understand that I can't just drop the car in Cadiz and, hop on public transportation back down to Benelux, which is an hour away. Even though it's only an hour, 45 minutes away, you can't get there from here, okay? So, you can't hop on a bus, or you can't hop on a train, or you can hop on a taxi, and it's 100 euros. So, yeah, it's an entirely different lifestyle. How I live is different, how you grocery shop, all that, but there's so many things that are much, much better that, you roll with it. What are you going to do? As we say, it is what it is. is what I signed up for. And I'm not going to, and I'm old enough to understand I'm not going to change it. Okay.
Right. Gotcha.
Younger, you come, oh, I'm coming. Of course they're going to understand the way I want things done. It's like, no, doesn't work like that.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing that story, your story with me. And
you're so welcome.
will we be seeing the Silver Peacock in Marbella at some point, do you think?
I'm certainly hoping so.
Okay. Well, I look forward to
anything you can do to help make that a reality, I'd be very happy.
Let's talk.
Okay.
Well, okay, Charlie. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that story. It's very unusual for us to hear it from the buyer perspective. It's always
and I think that especially since I went through the process and I tried to do it all on my own. And, as I said, considering that I find myself relatively fluent in in the finance area, and I threw my hands up, any American or, any buyer who's not, any buyer in general, I don't care if you're Spanish or what you are, if you're looking for any kind of decent property, you can't do this on your own. I mean, why? The cost to get a professional to do it for you, the advantages way outweigh. I mean, that's what you were talking about with the banks too. I mean, the rates Mark got me were nothing close to what the banks were originally quoting me when I tried to go by myself.
So get help is the message.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely get help. And as I said, I mean, it's different. You're coming from someplace else. I mean, how are you going to present your American tax return and your bank statements and explain to a Spanish banker what you do for a living if you're self-employed?
Well, Charlie, thank you again. Thank you so much for your time. And
you're certainly welcome. It was a pleasure. Anytime.